"Excuse me, I think you're in the wrong place. The public waiting area is downstairs," Heather said with a condescending smile to Maria and her 3 daughters. "We have passes," Maria replied softly. "Impossible," Heather sneered. "Attendant, remove them. They're disturbing the paying passengers." In a dim corner of the lounge, a mixed-race man in a suit looked up from his laptop, his eyes widening in disbelief. "But before we see what happens next, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get into the full story. Get out of this lounge right now. People like you don't belong here," the woman in the designer suit said loudly. Her voice cut through the calm atmosphere of the airport lounge. Maria Johnson took a deep breath. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice stayed steady. "We have passes. We have every right to be here." It had started as a perfect day. Maria had been planning this special treat for months. After working double shifts at the hospital for half a year, the 42-year-old nurse had saved enough money to buy one-day passes to the Sky High Lounge at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York. The passes were for herself and her 16-year-old identical triplet daughters, Zoe, Chloe, and Noe. They arrived at the airport 3 hours before their economy flight to Chicago. Maria's mother was recovering from surgery there, and they were going to visit her. "Look at this place," Zoe whispered as they waited in line at the lounge entrance. Her rectangular glasses slipped down her nose as she looked around with wide eyes. "It's so fancy." Chloe nodded, her colorful beaded braids swinging gently. "I can't believe we get to stay here before our flight." Noe didn't speak. She was the quietest of the 3, her fingers already itching to reach for the sketchbook in her backpack. A young man at the entrance smiled as they approached. His name tag read Tyler. "Welcome to Sky High Lounge," he said, scanning their passes. "Everything inside is complimentary. Enjoy your stay, ladies." The girls gasped when they entered. The lounge was spacious and elegant, with comfortable chairs, free food, charging stations, and large windows overlooking the airplanes. It was nothing like the crowded gates outside where they usually waited. "Remember, just 2 hours," Maria reminded her daughters as they settled near a window. "Then we board our flight." The girls filled their plates with snacks they normally couldn't afford: fresh fruit, cheese, small sandwiches, and cookies. Maria watched them with a smile, happy to give them this small luxury. Across the lounge, a white woman in her mid-40s looked up from her laptop. She wore an expensive suit and diamond earrings that caught the light when she moved. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and her manicured fingernails tapped against her coffee cup as she watched Maria and her daughters. For 20 minutes, everything was peaceful. Then the woman stood up and walked toward their table. "Excuse me," she said loudly, making other travelers turn to look. "I think you're in the wrong place. The public waiting area is downstairs." Maria looked up calmly. "We have passes for the lounge." "Those must be fake," the woman said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "People like you don't belong in this lounge." Zoe straightened in her chair. "Our passes are real. We paid for them." The woman, whose designer bag had the name Heather Williams on a luggage tag, scoffed and turned to Tyler, who was approaching nervously. "Remove them immediately," she snapped her fingers at him. "They're disturbing the real passengers." Tyler looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, perhaps there's been a mistake with your passes," he said to Maria, though his voice wavered. "There's no mistake," Maria insisted, showing their printed tickets again. She noticed other passengers staring or deliberately looking away, unwilling to get involved. Chloe touched her mother's arm. "Mom, maybe we should just go." Maria felt her daughters tense beside her. This was supposed to be their special day, one small luxury in their otherwise modest lives. Now it was turning into another humiliating experience. "Fine," Maria said quietly, gathering her things. "Girls, let's go." In a dimly lit corner of the lounge, a man looked up from his laptop. He had been working quietly, wearing simple clothes that hid his importance. Carlos Rodriguez was 45 years old and the CEO of American Eagle Airlines. He often used the lounge without announcing his presence to observe operations. Carlos was instantly drawn to the confrontation, but when he saw Maria's face, he froze. Time seemed to stop around him. They had met at Boston University 17 years ago. Their romance had been intense but brief. His wealthy family had threatened to cut him off if he continued dating the scholarship girl. Carlos had broken things off, believing it was for the best. He never knew Maria was pregnant when they parted ways. Now Carlos stared at the three teenage girls. They had his mother's almond-shaped eyes and his distinctive smile. The timing matched perfectly. These must be his daughters. As Maria urged her confused daughters to follow her toward the exit, Carlos felt a surge of both anger and shame. Anger at Heather's behavior and shame at his own past actions. "Wait," he called out, his voice commanding immediate attention. The lounge fell silent. Tyler froze in place. "Sir, Mr. Rodriguez, I was just following—" "Maria," Carlos said, approaching them. "Maria Johnson from Boston University?" Maria stopped, turning slowly. Recognition dawned on her face. "Carlos?" Heather stepped between them. "You know these people?" Her tone suggested disbelief. "Yes," Carlos replied evenly. "Maria was once very important to me." He looked at the triplets, who stared back with curious expressions. "And unless I'm mistaken, these young ladies might be my daughters." The lounge fell completely silent. Heather's face drained of color as she realized her mistake. The triplets exchanged shocked glances. "That's impossible," Heather sputtered. "You're Carlos Rodriguez, owner of American Eagle Airlines." "CEO and majority shareholder," Carlos corrected. "And these passengers have every right to be here." Maria stepped forward. "Girls, this is Carlos. We knew each other a long time ago." "Before we were born?" Zoe asked, always the quickest to understand. "Yes," Maria admitted. "Exactly then." Carlos turned to Tyler. "Please ensure Ms. Williams is moved to seat 42B by the restrooms on her upcoming flight." Then to Heather. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior in our lounges. Consider yourself banned from all American Eagle facilities." Heather opened her mouth, then closed it again. Without another word, she grabbed her things and hurried away. Carlos turned back to Maria and the girls. His hands trembled slightly as he extended one toward them. "I know this is sudden," he said, his voice softer now. "But would you allow me to sit with you? I think we have a lot to talk about." Zoe stood protectively next to her mother. "How do we know you're telling the truth?" Chloe studied his face. "He has your smile, Zoe. All of us have it." Noe, who had been silent until now, opened her sketchbook. She had drawn Carlos's face with remarkable detail, capturing the same features they all shared. Maria took a deep breath. "Girls, this is complicated. But yes, Carlos and I knew each other in college." She looked directly at him, "Though I never expected to see him again, especially not like this." "I never knew," Carlos said quietly, "about them. About you being pregnant. I would have—" "It's too late for that now," Maria interrupted. Tyler approached again, this time with a different attitude. "Mr. Rodriguez, would you like me to arrange a private space for your conversation?" Carlos nodded. "Thank you, Tyler. And please make sure we're not disturbed." As they followed Tyler to a quiet corner of the lounge, Zoe took a step forward and asked the question everyone was thinking. "Are you really our father?" Carlos looked at the three girls, his daughters, and nodded. "I believe I am. And I'd like the chance to explain, if you'll let me." Maria checked her watch. "We have an hour before our flight to Chicago. My mother is waiting for us." "I understand," Carlos said. He hesitated, then added, "But after 16 years, I hope you can give me a few minutes." The triplets looked at each other, then at their mother. Maria nodded slowly. "A few minutes?" she agreed. "We have a lot of questions." Carlos led them to the private room, knowing that in those few minutes, everything in all their lives was about to change forever. "A few minutes," Maria agreed, following Carlos into the private room. "That's all we have." Two security officers approached Heather Williams, who was still standing nearby with her face flushed red. "This is ridiculous," Heather protested as they escorted her toward the exit. "Do you know who I am? I've been a member of this lounge for 8 years." Carlos closed the door, muffling Heather's complaints. The private room had comfortable chairs around a small table. Tyler quickly arranged water bottles and a plate of fresh fruit before quietly leaving. "I'm sorry about that scene," Carlos said, sitting down across from Maria. "That shouldn't have happened to you and your daughters." "Our daughters," Zoe corrected, her voice sharp. "Apparently." An uncomfortable silence filled the room. The triplets exchanged looks, a silent conversation passing between them that only they understood. "Why didn't you tell us about him?" Chloe finally asked, turning to her mother. Her voice wasn't accusing, just confused. Maria sighed deeply. "I tried to contact Carlos when I found out I was pregnant with you three. I called his family's home. I wrote letters. I even went to their house once." "I never received any calls or letters," Carlos said. "My family." He paused, looking down at his hands. "My parents didn't approve of Maria. They thought she wasn't from the right background for me. I was too weak to stand up to them then. I let them dictate who I could be with." "So your rich family didn't want you dating a black scholarship student?" Zoe asked directly. Carlos met her eyes. "Yes, it's not an excuse. It was wrong. I was wrong." "But you never knew about us?" Noe asked quietly. It was the first time she had spoken directly to him. "No, I would have been there if I had known." Carlos looked at Maria. "You have to believe that." Maria shook her head slightly. "I don't know what I believe anymore." "Your mother told me you didn't want to see me, that you had moved on." "She lied," Carlos said simply. Chloe leaned forward. "Do you have other children? A wife?" "No, no children, no wife." Carlos paused. "I was in a relationship until recently, but nothing serious." Zoe was still watching him with suspicion. "So you're the CEO of an entire airline? With private jets and everything?" Carlos nodded. "Yes, American Eagle Airlines. Actually, I could arrange for a private company jet to take you to Chicago today. It would be much more comfortable than—" "No," Maria interrupted firmly. "We don't need your help. We've managed for 16 years without it." Carlos looked like he wanted to argue but stopped himself. "Of course. I understand." Noe had taken out her sketchbook again and was drawing quickly, her eyes moving between Carlos's face and her paper. The other two sisters whispered to each other. "How can we be sure you're really our father?" Zoe asked. "We can do a DNA test," Carlos replied, "but I can see myself in all three of you. You have my mother's eyes, my smile." "Your mother who didn't want you to be with our mom," Chloe pointed out. Carlos nodded sadly. "Yes, my parents are complicated people. They had their own struggles coming to this country from Cuba and Puerto Rico. They worked hard to build wealth and status, and they became very protective of it." The airport announcement system crackled to life. "American Airlines Flight 753 to Chicago O'Hare will begin boarding in 20 minutes at Gate 14. "That's our flight," Maria said, standing up. "We need to go." "Please," Carlos said, reaching into his pocket for a business card. He wrote something on the back. "This is my personal number, not my office line. I'd like to stay in touch, to get to know you all." Maria hesitated before taking the card. "I want to make this right," Carlos continued. "I've missed 16 years. I don't want to miss any more." "What exactly do you want from us?" Maria asked. "Just a chance," Carlos said. "A chance to know my daughters, to support them, to be in their lives." The triplets looked at each other again. "I think we should talk about this," Chloe suggested, always the peacemaker. "We're going to be in Chicago for a week. Maybe we can think about it and call you when we get back?" Carlos nodded. That's fair. More than fair. As they walked toward the door, Noe suddenly turned and handed Carlos a page from her sketchbook. It was a detailed drawing of him sitting across from the three girls, their matching features highlighted with subtle skill. "You're very talented," Carlos said, staring at the drawing with emotion in his eyes. "She's amazing," Maria agreed, a hint of pride breaking through her guarded expression. "All three of them are." "You did that," Carlos said quietly. "You raised three incredible young women." Maria nodded. "I did, without help." They walked together to the main terminal in awkward silence. At the security checkpoint, where Carlos couldn't follow without a boarding pass, they stopped. "Have a safe flight," Carlos said, "and a good visit with your mother." "Thank you," Maria replied stiffly. "Will you really call?" Carlos asked, unable to hide the hope in his voice. "We'll think about it," Maria answered. Then, more softly, "The girls deserve to know where they come from." As they walked away, the triplets peppered their mother with questions. "Was he really your boyfriend? Did you love him? Why didn't his parents like you?" Maria waited until they reached their gate before answering. They found seats in a quiet corner away from other passengers. "Carlos and I met in a literature class at Boston University," she explained. "He was smart, charming, ambitious. We dated for almost a year. I truly believed we were in love." "What happened?" Chloe asked. "His parents happened," Maria said. "They had plans for him that didn't include me. When I tried to tell him I was pregnant, his mother intercepted my messages. She told me Carlos had moved on and didn't want to see me again." "That's horrible," Zoe said. Maria nodded. "I was heartbroken, but then I had you three and you became my whole world. I finished nursing school with Grandma's help and we made our own family." "Are you going to let him into our lives now?" Noah asked, looking up from her sketchbook. Maria touched her daughter's cheek gently. "That's not just my decision anymore. You're old enough to have a say in this too. What do you think?" The triplets exchanged looks. "I don't trust him yet," Zoe said firmly. "I think we should give him a chance," Chloe countered. Noe just shrugged, but her sketchbook was open to a new drawing. Three girls standing between two distant figures who were slowly moving closer together. Meanwhile, Carlos sat in his office at the airport making a phone call. "James, I need your help with something personal and urgent," he said to his lawyer. "I need to arrange DNA testing and begin setting up trust funds for 3 teenage girls." He paused, looking at Noe's drawing. "My daughters. I just found out I have daughters." As boarding began for the flight to Chicago, Maria looked at Carlos's business card one more time before carefully placing it in her wallet. She didn't know what would happen when they returned to New York, but she knew their lives had already changed forever. The flight to Chicago had been quiet, with each of the Johnson women lost in their own thoughts. During their week in Chicago, the triplets had bombarded their grandmother Gloria with questions about Carlos Rodriguez. "Grandma, did you ever meet him?" Zoe had asked as they sat around Gloria's hospital bed. Gloria, a strong woman in her 60s recovering from knee surgery, had sighed deeply. "Once, when Maria told me she was pregnant." "What was he like?" Chloe wanted to know. "Handsome, polite, scared." Gloria had looked at Maria before continuing. "I told your mother she didn't need him, that we would manage on our own." "Did you tell her to stay away from him?" Noe asked quietly. Gloria shook her head. "His family did that. They made it clear they thought Maria wasn't good enough for their son." She had reached for Maria's hand. "But they were wrong. It was their son who wasn't good enough for my daughter." Now, 7 days later, the Johnson family was unlocking the door to their modest Bronx apartment. The building was old but maintained, their 3-bedroom unit small but clean and filled with photos and artwork from the girls' childhoods. "Home sweet home," Maria said, dropping her bag by the door. "Check the mail, Chloe." Chloe sorted through the stack from their mailbox. Bills, ads, college brochure for Zoe, and this. She held up an official-looking envelope addressed to Maria Johnson. Maria opened it and read quickly, her expression changing. "What is it, Mom?" Zoe asked. "It's from Carlos." "Well, from his lawyer." Maria handed over the letter. "The DNA results?" Zoe read aloud. "The test confirms with 99.9% certainty that Carlos Rodriguez is the biological father of Zoe, Chloe, and Noe Johnson." "So it's official," Chloe said. "He really is our father." The phone rang, making them all jump. Maria answered cautiously. "Hello?" "Yes, we just got home." She paused, listening. "I see. Yes, I received the letter." Another pause. "Tomorrow evening?" "I suppose that would be okay." She hung up and turned to her daughters. "That was Carlos. He wants to come visit tomorrow. To talk." "Here?" Zoe looked around their apartment with new eyes. "He wants to come here?" Maria nodded. "Is that okay with you three?" "I told him 7 o'clock." The next evening, the triplets were nervous. They had spent hours cleaning the apartment and debating what to wear. "He's seen us in regular clothes already," Noe pointed out, deciding on simple jeans and her favorite blue sweater. At exactly 7 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Maria opened it to find Carlos standing there, holding several packages. He wore casual clothes, jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than their entire wardrobes but didn't look flashy. "Thank you for letting me come," he said, stepping inside. He looked around the apartment, taking in the worn furniture, the carefully maintained space, the walls covered with the girls' artwork and school certificates. If he was surprised by their modest home, he hid it well. "I brought a few things," Carlos said, setting the packages on the coffee table. "Just some things I thought you might like." The girls approached cautiously. Carlos handed each a package with their name. Zoe opened hers first. Inside were 3 advanced medical textbooks and information about pre-med programs at top universities. "Your mother mentioned you want to be a doctor," Carlos explained. "These were recommended by the head of surgery at New York Presbyterian." Chloe's package contained language learning software and books. "I heard you're interested in different cultures and languages. This program is what international diplomats use." For Noe, there was a set of professional art supplies, pencils, paints, and sketchbooks of a quality she had only dreamed of. "These are from an artist who works with our company on design." She said these are the best. The girls thanked him quietly, each touched by the thoughtfulness of his gifts. "I made lasagna," Maria said, breaking the awkward silence. "If you'd like to stay for dinner." "I'd love to," Carlos replied. They sat around the small kitchen table, the space suddenly feeling cramped with Carlos there. He took a bite of the lasagna and smiled genuinely. "This is delicious, Maria. You always were an amazing cook." "Mom makes it every Sunday," Chloe said. "It's our tradition." "Do you have family traditions?" Noe asked Carlos. Carlos nodded. "Some, though not as nice as this." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, showing them photos. "This is my family. My parents, Richard and Elena Rodriguez." The girls leaned in to see an elegant older couple standing in front of a large house. "They live in Westchester County now," Carlos explained. "My father came from Cuba as a teenager. My mother is Puerto Rican, but she grew up in New York." "Are they still?" Zoe hesitated, then continued directly. "Are they still the kind of people who would tell Mom she wasn't good enough?" Carlos sighed. "They're complicated people. They grew up poor and faced a lot of discrimination. When they finally achieved success, they became very protective of it." "That doesn't excuse what they did," Maria said quietly. "No, it doesn't," Carlos agreed. "Nothing excuses it." "Will we ever meet them?" Chloe asked. "That's up to you and your mother," Carlos replied. "They know about you now. I told them after the DNA test confirmed what I already knew." "What did they say?" Maria asked, unable to hide her curiosity. "They were shocked." "My father didn't say much. My mother—" Carlos paused. She asked if I was sure the test was accurate. Zoe made a disgusted sound. Nice. I'd like you all to visit my office sometime, Carlos said, changing the subject. See what I do. American Eagle headquarters is in Manhattan. Can we? Chloe asked her mother. That would be so cool. Maria nodded reluctantly. If you want to. After dinner, Carlos helped clear the table despite Maria's protests. As he prepared to leave, he handed Maria an envelope. What's this? She asked. Information about the trust funds I've set up for the girls' education, Carlos said. And some other papers my lawyer prepared about child support. We don't need your money, Maria said immediately. I know you don't need it, Carlos replied. But they're entitled to it. It's not charity, Maria. It's my responsibility. 16 years late. After Carlos left, the family sat in the living room, processing everything. He seems nice, Chloe said cautiously. He's trying too hard, Zoe countered. Expensive gifts. Money. That's easy for someone rich. I don't think it's just that, Noe said, looking at the high-quality art supplies. He actually paid attention to what we care about. Maria was quiet, staring at the envelope Carlos had given her. What are you thinking, Mom? Chloe asked. I'm thinking about how complicated this is, Maria answered honestly. For 16 years, it's been just us. Now suddenly there's Carlos, wanting to be part of your lives. What do you want us to do? Zoe asked. Maria shook her head. It's not just my decision anymore. You three are old enough to have a say in this. I want to get to know him, Chloe admitted. He's part of who we are. I'm still not sure, Zoe said, but I'll go see his office. Noe simply nodded, already using her new art supplies to sketch their dinner scene. Across town, in his penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, Carlos stared at his phone. His finger hovered over his parents' number. Finally, he pressed call. Mother, we need to talk, he said when Elena answered. About what you did 17 years ago. About the letters and calls from Maria that you kept from me. Carlos, that was a long time ago, Elena replied. We did what we thought was best for you. You had no right, Carlos said, his voice firm. Those girls grew up without a father because of what you and Dad did. You can't prove those girls are yours, Elena said dismissively. The DNA test already proved it, Carlos countered. And even if it hadn't, I would have known just by looking at them. They're my daughters, Mother. Your granddaughters. There was silence on the line. I want to bring them to meet you, Carlos continued. But first, you and Dad need to understand something. Maria Johnson is their mother. She raised 3 amazing young women on her own while working as a nurse. She deserves your respect. And so do my daughters. After hanging up, Carlos looked at the drawing Noe had given him at the airport. He carefully placed it in a frame on his desk. Tomorrow he would start looking for an apartment near the Johnsons' Bronx home. He had 16 years to make up for, and he wasn't going to waste any more time. Carlos found an apartment near the Bronx neighborhood where the Johnson family lived within 2 days. He wanted to be close, to show his commitment to being part of his daughters' lives. 2 weeks after their first dinner together, he invited them to visit American Eagle headquarters in Manhattan. Are you sure you want to do this? Maria asked the girls as they waited at the subway station on a Wednesday morning. They had all dressed in their best clothes, Zoe in a button-up shirt and dark pants, Chloe in a colorful dress, and Noe in a simple black outfit with artistic jewelry she had made herself. Maria wore her one good pantsuit saved for special occasions. Yes, Chloe said excitedly. I want to see where he works. I'm curious, Noe admitted quietly. I still don't trust him, Zoe said, but I want to see this world he's from. Maria had taken a rare day off from the hospital for this visit. The subway ride from the Bronx to Manhattan showed the changing city, from their working-class neighborhood to the gleaming skyscrapers of Midtown. That's it, Chloe pointed as they exited the station. The American Eagle building stood 50 stories tall, all glass and steel with the company logo, a stylized eagle, near the top. "It's so big," Noe whispered, already reaching for her sketchbook. Inside the lobby, security guards sat behind a large desk. When the Johnson family approached, the guards looked at them with obvious suspicion. "Can I help you?" one asked, his tone suggesting they might be in the wrong place. "We're here to see Carlos Rodriguez," Maria said. The guard raised his eyebrows. "Mr. Rodriguez? Do you have an appointment?" "Yes," Maria answered firmly. "He's expecting us." "I'll need to see some ID," the guard said, holding out his hand. As the Johnsons handed over their identification cards, the guard studied each one carefully, looking back and forth between their faces and the photos. "Is there a problem?" Maria asked after several uncomfortable minutes. Before the guard could answer, a young woman with a tablet hurried across the lobby. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm Amanda Parker, Mr. Rodriguez's assistant. He sent me to bring you up." She smiled warmly at the triplets. "You must be Zoe, Chloe, and Noe. Mr. Rodriguez has been talking about your visit all week." Amanda led them past security to a special elevator marked Executive. "This goes directly to the top floors," she explained. As they entered, two men in expensive suits were already inside. They glanced at the Johnson family with curious expressions. "Who are the visitors, Amanda?" one man asked. "Mr. Rodriguez's guests," Amanda replied simply. The men exchanged looks. One whispered to the other, not quite quietly enough. "Must be the daughters everyone's talking about." Zoe stiffened. Chloe shifted uncomfortably. Noe stared at her shoes. The elevator opened on the 50th floor. Carlos was waiting for them, his face lighting up when he saw them. "You made it," he said warmly. "Welcome to American Eagle." He led them through glass doors into a space unlike anything they had ever seen. The executive floor had high ceilings, artwork on the walls, and views of the entire city. Carlos's office was at the end of the hallway, a huge corner space bigger than their entire apartment. "This is all yours?" Zoe asked, looking around. "Yes," Carlos said. "I've been with the company for 20 years." His office walls held framed photos, Carlos with famous actors, with the former president, with business leaders they recognized from television. "You know all these people?" Chloe asked, amazed. "Business connections," Carlos explained. "When you run an airline, you meet many different people." He showed them around the executive floor, introducing them to people they passed. Each time he said the same words with obvious pride, "These are my daughters, Zoe, Chloe, and Noe Johnson." Some people seemed genuinely happy to meet them. Others smiled politely but stared when they thought the girls weren't looking. "Let's have lunch in the executive dining room," Carlos suggested. "I want you to meet some of my leadership team." The dining room had a stunning view of Central Park. As they sat at Carlos's regular table, a man approached. He wore an expensive suit and had gray hair at his temples. "So these are the famous Johnson girls," he said with a tight smile. "I'm Richard Bennett, Chief Financial Officer." "Nice to meet you," Chloe said politely. Bennett turned to Carlos. "The board meeting is still at 3 o'clock. We need to discuss the financial implications of your recent discoveries." His eyes moved back to the girls meaningfully. "We can discuss that later, Richard," Carlos said firmly. After Bennett left, another executive approached, a woman with a warm smile. "I'm Sofia Diaz, Marketing Director," she said. "It's wonderful to meet you all. Carlos has been showing me your artwork, Noe. It's incredible." Noe blushed. "Thank you. If you're interested in design or marketing, I'd love to show you what our creative team does," Sofia continued. "And Chloe, Carlos mentioned your interest in different cultures. Our international marketing team works with partners around the world." While the girls were talking with Sofia, Maria excused herself to find the restroom. In the hallway, she nearly bumped into a stylish woman with perfect makeup and diamond earrings. "Excuse me," Maria said. The woman stared at her. You're Maria Johnson, aren't you? Maria nodded cautiously. I'm Jennifer, the woman said. Carlos and I have been dating for the past year. Maria felt suddenly uncomfortable. I see. I didn't know. Obviously, Jennifer interrupted, just like I didn't know about you or your daughters until last week. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Carlos has been very distracted lately. Before Maria could respond, Carlos appeared in the hallway. Jennifer, he said, surprised. I didn't know you were coming in today. Clearly, Jennifer replied. We need to talk, Carlos. Soon. She nodded stiffly at Maria and walked away. I'm sorry about that, Carlos said quietly. Jennifer and I, things are complicated right now. Back in the dining room, Carlos showed the girls a photo he kept in his wallet. A much younger Carlos and Maria at a Boston University party. You two looked happy, Chloe observed. We were, Carlos said softly. Zoe had been mostly quiet, but now she spoke up. I don't understand something. If you were so successful with all this money and this huge office, why did we sometimes struggle to pay rent? Why did Mom have to work double shifts? Why did Noe have to use school art supplies because we couldn't afford the good ones? The table went silent. Maria looked at her daughter with surprise. Carlos put down his fork. You're right to ask that, Zoe. The truth is, I didn't know about you three. But that's not an excuse. If I had looked harder for your mother, if I had stood up to my parents back then, things would have been very different. As they prepared to leave, Carlos made one more invitation. We have a company picnic next weekend at a place in the Hamptons. My parents will be there. He paused. I'd like you all to come. To meet them. The subway ride home was quiet. Each Johnson woman was lost in her own thoughts about the day, about Carlos's world that was so different from their own. What did you think? Maria finally asked as they walked from the station to their apartment. Everyone was staring at us, Zoe said, like we didn't belong. Not everyone, Chloe argued. Sophia was really nice. His office is bigger than our whole apartment, Noe observed. At home, they sat in their small living room, still processing everything they had seen. Should we go to this picnic? Maria asked. Meet his parents? The same people who thought you weren't good enough? Zoe said angrily. Who kept us from our father for 16 years? Maybe people can change, Chloe suggested hopefully. Noe looked up from her sketchbook. She had drawn the contrast between their apartment and Carlos's office with remarkable detail. I think we should go, she said quietly. We should see all of it, the good and the bad. Maria looked at her daughters, so different in their reactions, yet united in facing this new reality together. Okay, she decided, we'll go to the picnic. But at the first sign of disrespect, we leave. Agreed? The triplets nodded in unison. Agreed. The Saturday of the American Eagle Company picnic arrived with perfect weather, clear blue skies and gentle sunshine. Carlos had sent a town car to pick up the Johnson family at 9 in the morning. I feel so out of place, Maria said quietly as they rode through the streets of Manhattan, heading toward the highway that would take them to the Hamptons. You look beautiful, Mom, Chloe assured her. Maria had spent hours deciding what to wear, finally choosing a simple blue sundress. The girls were also dressed in their best casual clothes, Zoe in white pants and a navy top, Chloe in a floral dress, and Noe in black jeans and a silver blouse that complemented her artistic style. After 2 hours, the car turned onto a private road lined with tall trees. It ended at a massive estate with manicured lawns, stretching down to a private beach. Luxury cars filled the parking area, Mercedes, BMWs, and Porsches. This is where the picnic is? Zoe asked, staring through the window. This isn't a park. It's a mansion. It belongs to one of the board members, the driver explained. They host the company event every year. Carlos was waiting for them near the entrance. He wore casual clothes, khaki pants, and a blue button-up shirt that probably cost more than Maria's entire outfit. "You came," he said, smiling with obvious relief. "I wasn't sure you would." "We said we would," Maria replied simply. Carlos led them toward the back of the house where tables had been set up on a large stone patio. Beyond it, the lawn sloped gently down to the beach. Company employees in designer casual wear stood in small groups, drinking from crystal glasses and eating food served by uniformed staff. "Everyone's staring at us," Noe whispered. She was right. As they walked with Carlos, conversations stopped. People tried to look casual while studying the Johnson family with curious eyes. Sofia Diaz approached them with a genuine smile. "Maria, girls, I'm so glad you could come. Let me show you around." As Sofia led the triplets toward the food tables, Carlos touched Maria's arm gently. "My parents just arrived," he said quietly. "They're over there." Maria followed his gaze to an elegant older couple standing near the edge of the patio. Richard Rodriguez was tall and distinguished with silver hair and a stern expression. Elena Rodriguez wore an expensive cream-colored outfit with gold jewelry and looked at least 10 years younger than her actual age. "Do you want to meet them now or later?" Carlos asked. "Let's get it over with," Maria said, straightening her shoulders. Before they could move, Jennifer appeared wearing a designer sundress and large sunglasses. She slipped her arm through Carlos's possessively. "Carlos, darling, I've been looking for you." She nodded stiffly at Maria. "Hello again?" "Jennifer, not now," Carlos said firmly, removing his arm from hers. Jennifer's smile tightened. "The board members want to speak with you." Richard mentioned something about an important announcement. "I'll talk to them later," Carlos replied. "Right now I'm introducing Maria to my parents." Jennifer's eyebrows rose above her sunglasses. "Oh, that should be interesting." She walked away with a backward glance. Carlos led Maria across the patio toward his parents. As they approached, Elena Rodriguez's expression changed from polite boredom to shock. "Carlos," she said, her voice tight. "Is this—" "Mother, father," Carlos said formally. "This is Maria Johnson. Maria, my parents, Richard, and Elena Rodriguez." Maria looked directly at the woman who had once told her she wasn't good enough for her son. "Hello, Mrs. Rodriguez. It's been 17 years. Elena's mouth formed a tight line. "Indeed it has." Richard Rodriguez extended his hand mechanically. "Miss Johnson." "And where are—" Elena looked around. "The girls?" "Your granddaughters are with Sofia," Carlos said, emphasizing the word granddaughters. "I'll introduce you shortly." Richard pulled Carlos aside. "A word, son." As they stepped away, Maria found herself alone with Elena. "So," Elena said quietly, "you finally got what you wanted." "Excuse me?" Maria replied. "A connection to the Rodriguez fortune," Elena said. 17 years later, but you found a way." Maria felt anger rise in her chest but kept her voice calm. "I didn't seek out Carlos. We met by accident, and I raised my daughters without any help from your family." "Yes, well." Elena looked Maria up and down. "I'm sure you did your best under the circumstances." Across the patio, the triplets were having their own experiences. Sofia had introduced them to some younger employees who seemed genuinely interested in getting to know them, but others at the picnic were less welcoming. Zoe overheard CFO Richard Bennett talking to another executive near the drinks table. "The paternity situation creates significant financial exposure," Bennett was saying. "If these girls make claims on company shares or future inheritance—" "I'm going to look at the beach," Zoe told her sisters abruptly, walking away before she could hear more. Meanwhile, Carlos returned from his conversation with his father looking tense. "Is everything okay?" Maria asked. "Fine," Carlos replied, though his expression said otherwise. "Let's find the girls for introductions." The formal meeting between the triplets and their grandparents was uncomfortable. Richard and Elena studied the three teenagers with critical eyes. "They do have the Rodriguez eyes," Elena admitted, "especially that one." She pointed at Chloe. Their names are Zoe, Chloe, and Noe, Maria corrected, and they can hear you. Of course, Elena said with a forced smile. How unique your names are. Lunch was served at noon, not hamburgers and hot dogs, but gourmet food on fine china plates. The Johnson family sat with Carlos at a table near his parents. Jennifer joined them, sitting close to Carlos and touching his arm whenever possible. So, girls, Elena said from the next table, tell me about your school. Is it one of the private academies in New York? We go to Bronx Science High School, Chloe answered. It's public, but it's one of the best schools in the city. Public school, Elena repeated, her tone making the words sound like prison. How interesting. And what extracurricular activities do you enjoy? As the girls answered, Elena nodded with a tight smile. Well, she finally said, with the right finishing and proper guidance, I'm sure you'll overcome your interesting upbringing. Perhaps summer etiquette programs would help before college. The table went silent. Maria put down her fork slowly. What exactly do you mean by overcome their upbringing? She asked quietly. Elena waved her hand. You've clearly done your best, Maria. But these girls are Rodriguez women now. They'll need proper preparation for the world they'll be entering. Maria stood up, her chair scraping against the stone patio. All nearby conversations stopped. My daughters don't need finishing, Mrs. Rodriguez, she said, her voice strong and clear. Zoe is at the top of her class and president of the debate team. Chloe speaks 3 languages and volunteers at a community center every weekend. Noe's artwork has been displayed in citywide exhibitions. She looked around at the watching employees. I raised 3 exceptional young women while working full-time as an ER nurse. Despite working double shifts, I made sure they had art lessons, science camps, and maintained perfect grade point averages. Maria turned back to Elena. They have values, dignity, and intelligence. They don't need your approval or your etiquette lessons. She looked at her daughters. Girls, we're leaving. I won't subject you to this kind of disrespect. The triplets stood immediately, their faces a mixture of shock and pride. Carlos rose too. Maria! No, Carlos, she interrupted. You wanted them to meet your parents. They have. Now we're going home. Richard Rodriguez stepped forward. Carlos, control this situation. Remember what we discussed about your position in the company. All eyes turned to Carlos. In that moment, he faced the same choice he had failed 17 years ago, his parents' approval or standing with Maria. This time, he didn't hesitate. I'm sorry, Father, Carlos said clearly, but Maria is right. The way you're treating her and my daughters is unacceptable. He moved to stand beside the Johnson family. If my position in this company depends on turning my back on them again, then maybe it's not a position worth having. A shocked murmur ran through the watching crowd. Jennifer's mouth dropped open. Richard's face darkened with anger. Elena looked as if she'd been slapped. Let's go, Carlos said to Maria and the girls. I'll take you home. As they walked toward the exit, the company employees parted to let them pass. Sophia gave them a small nod of approval. CFO Bennett watched with calculating eyes. Jennifer stared after Carlos with hurt and anger. In the car, driving back to the city, no one spoke for several minutes. Finally, Chloe broke the silence. Did you just risk your whole company for us? Carlos met her eyes in the rearview mirror. Some things are more important than a company. Your parents might vote against you, Zoe said. That CFO guy was already talking about it. Let them try, Carlos replied. What matters is that you know I will always choose you. All of you. He glanced at Maria. I should have done it 17 years ago. I'm sorry it took me so long. Maria looked out the window at the passing scenery. What happens now? Now, Carlos said, we face whatever comes next. Together. The fallout from the company picnic came quickly. The Monday morning after they had left the Hamptons estate together, Carlos received a call from the board secretary. "Emergency board meeting, Wednesday at 10 in the morning," she informed him. Regarding succession planning and recent developments, Carlos knew exactly what recent developments meant: his newly discovered family and his public stand against his parents. Richard and Elena Rodriguez still held significant shares in American Eagle Airlines. Their disapproval could cause real problems. That evening, Carlos parked outside the Johnson family's apartment building in the Bronx. He had been doing a lot of thinking since the picnic 2 days ago. "I have something to show you all," he said when Maria opened the door. "Can you come with me for about an hour?" "Now?" Maria asked, surprised. "Please, it's important." 20 minutes later, they parked outside an apartment building just 8 blocks from their home. It was newer than their building, but not luxurious, a solid middle-class residence. "What are we doing here?" Zoe asked. Carlos led them inside and up to the 3rd floor. He unlocked a door and stepped back. "This is what I wanted to show you," he said. The apartment was spacious and clean with simple furniture and empty walls. It had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and large windows that let in plenty of light. "I rented it last week," Carlos explained. "I want to be closer, to be available for you girls without imposing on your lives." Maria walked through the space, saying nothing. "You're moving here?" Chloe asked, surprised. "But what about your penthouse?" "I'm keeping that too," Carlos said, "but this is where I'll spend most of my time. I want to be part of your daily lives, not just for special occasions." Noe walked to the windows looking out at the street. "This is a normal place," she observed. "Not fancy." "That's the point," Carlos replied. "I don't need fancy. I need to be near my family." Later that night, after dropping the Johnsons back home, Carlos returned to his Manhattan penthouse to find Jennifer waiting in the lobby. "We need to talk," she said. Upstairs in his apartment, Jennifer paced across the expensive marble floors. "Everyone is talking about what happened at the picnic," she said. "You publicly sided with them against your own parents." "They're my daughters, Jennifer. Daughters you didn't know existed until a month ago." Jennifer stopped pacing. "What about us, Carlos? We've been together for a year. We talked about marriage. Now suddenly you're renting an apartment in the Bronx and playing daddy." "I'm not playing anything," Carlos said quietly. "I'm trying to make up for 16 years of absence." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. "There's no room for me in this new life you're creating, is there?" Carlos couldn't lie to her. "I'm sorry." "So am I." Jennifer picked up her purse. "Goodbye, Carlos." The next morning, Carlos met with his lawyer before the board meeting. "I want to establish 3 separate education trust funds," he instructed. "One for each of my daughters, and I want to start paying child support to Maria, retroactively for 16 years. The lawyer raised his eyebrows. "That's a substantial amount of money." "They deserve it," Carlos said firmly. "But don't tell Maria the total amount yet. She's very independent and might refuse it all. Start with the education funds. She won't deny the girls that opportunity." The emergency board meeting was tense. Richard and Elena Rodriguez sat with stony faces as Carlos entered the conference room. CFO. Richard Bennett had prepared a presentation titled Succession Implications, Recent Developments. "The discovery of Mr. Rodriguez's previously unknown heirs creates several concerns," Bennett began. "My daughters," Carlos interrupted, "are named Zoe, Chloe, and Noe Johnson. Please refer to them properly." Bennett cleared his throat. "Yes, well, the sudden appearance of your daughters raises questions about company leadership and potential share distribution. My personal life is separate from my leadership of this company," Carlos stated. "The performance of American Eagle Airlines has been exceptional under my guidance for 11 years. That hasn't changed." Richard Rodriguez spoke up. "The concern, son, is your judgment. These people have appeared out of nowhere and suddenly you're choosing them over your family, over the company we built." "I'm not choosing anyone over the company," Carlos replied. I'm choosing to acknowledge my daughters, to be their father. At what cost? Elena asked. Sofia Diaz, the marketing director who had been friendly to the Johnsons at the picnic, unexpectedly spoke up. With all due respect, Mrs. Rodriguez, I don't see how Carlos building a relationship with his children reflects poorly on his leadership. If anything, taking responsibility demonstrates strong character. The meeting ended without resolution. The board would continue to evaluate the situation. Outside the conference room, Richard pulled Carlos aside. You have a choice to make, he said coldly. Your position in this company or these new attachments. You can't have both. Over the next weeks, Carlos focused on building relationships with each of his daughters in different ways. Zoe, always the most skeptical, gradually warmed to him when he helped with her college applications. I want to be a doctor, she told him as they sat at the kitchen table in the Johnson apartment, surrounded by application forms. But medical school is so expensive. Money won't be an issue, Carlos assured her. The trust fund I set up will cover everything. He also introduced her to Dr. Sarah Williams, the chief of surgery at New York Presbyterian Hospital. She's brilliant, Zoe said afterward, excitement breaking through her usual reserve. She said I could shadow her next summer. Chloe discovered an unexpected interest in aviation management. Carlos brought her to the airline's operations center during a snowstorm. This is mission control, he explained as they entered a room with large screens showing flight paths and weather patterns. Every flight decision happens here. Chloe watched, fascinated, as staff coordinated dozens of flight adjustments. This is amazing, she said. All these systems working together. Carlos smiled. You have a natural understanding of this. Would you like to intern here next summer? Noé remained the most distant until Carlos connected her with Lisa Chen, a renowned artist who sometimes created designs for the airline. Your work shows remarkable perspective, Lisa told Noé during their first meeting. You see things others miss. Noé blushed at the praise. Thank you. I'd like to mentor you, Lisa continued, if that's okay with you and your mother. For the first time, Noé looked at Carlos with something like gratitude. Maria noticed the changes in her daughters. They were happier, more confident, excited about new opportunities. But she also noticed changes in how people treated her. Neighbors who had barely nodded hello now stopped to chat when they heard about her connection to Carlos Rodriguez. At the hospital where she worked, the administrator called her into his office. Maria, he said with an overly friendly smile, I understand you have a connection with Carlos Rodriguez of American Eagle Airlines. He's the father of my daughters, Maria said cautiously. Wonderful. The hospital is fundraising for a new pediatric wing. Perhaps you could mention it to Mr. Rodriguez. We're always looking for generous donors. Maria left feeling uncomfortable. She had worked at the hospital for 12 years based on her skills as a nurse. Now suddenly she was valued for her connection to Carlos. One evening, Carlos invited Maria to dinner at a small restaurant near his Bronx apartment. Just us, he said. We need to talk about the future. Over dinner, Carlos proposed a new idea. I want to establish a nursing scholarship in your name at Boston University for students like you were, smart, dedicated, needing financial help. Maria stared at him. Why would you do that? Because I've seen how much good you do as a nurse, and because… He hesitated. Because I should have supported you 17 years ago. I want to support your dreams now. My dreams? You once told me you wanted to teach nursing someday, to open a small education center in an underserved area. Maria was surprised he remembered. That was a long time ago. Is it still something you want? Carlos asked. Maybe, but I can't accept that kind of help from you. Why not? Carlos asked gently. You've been independent for so long, Maria. You've done everything alone, but you don't have to anymore. Maria looked down at her plate. It's hard to change after 16 years. I know, Carlos said, For me too. But we have to try, for the girls. As he drove her home, Carlos didn't mention the ultimatum his parents had given him that morning: choose between the company leadership and his new family. The board vote was scheduled for next week. If his parents voted their shares against him, he could lose everything he had built. But looking at Maria's profile in the dim car light, Carlos realized something important. He had already made his choice at the picnic. He would choose his daughters every time, no matter the cost. The next morning, the financial news headlines shocked the Johnson family. American Eagle CEO faces leadership challenge from family. The article featured a photo of Carlos with a smaller insert of Richard and Elena Rodriguez. Zoe found it online while checking her phone before school. "Mom!" she called from the kitchen table. "You need to see this." Maria read the article over her daughter's shoulder, her coffee growing cold in her hand. The report described a family power struggle and concerns about succession planning after the CEO's personal discoveries. It quoted unnamed sources saying Richard and Elena Rodriguez had called for a vote of no confidence in their son's leadership. "What does this mean?" Chloe asked. "It means his parents are trying to take his company away," Zoe explained. "Because of us?" Noe asked quietly. Maria shook her head. "This is not your fault. This is about control and pride." Later that morning, Carlos arrived at American Eagle headquarters to find his assistant Amanda waiting anxiously. "The legal team needs to see you immediately," she said. "And your father called 3 times already." In the conference room, his lawyers laid out the situation. Richard and Elena Rodriguez had formally requested a board vote on Carlos's leadership. They cited personal distractions affecting business judgment as their primary concern. "They've been calling board members individually," explained James Wilson, the lead attorney, "making their case against you." "What are our options?" Carlos asked. "First, we need to solidify your leadership team," James replied. "Identify who supports you and who might be swayed by your parents." Carlos nodded. "Sofia Diaz is loyal. I'm promoting her to Chief Operating Officer effective immediately." He spent the next hours calling key board members and reshaping his leadership team. Around noon, he took a break to call Maria. "Have you seen the news?" he asked. "Yes," Maria replied. "The girls saw it too." "Carlos, what's happening?" "My parents are trying to remove me as CEO," he explained. "They're using my relationship with you and the girls as the reason, claiming I'm distracted from business." "Will you lose the company?" "I don't know," Carlos admitted, "but I'm fighting it." That evening, Carlos visited the Johnson apartment. The girls were waiting with questions. "Is this because of the picnic?" Chloe asked. "Because you stood up for us?" "Partly," Carlos answered honestly, "but it's also about control. My parents have always expected me to follow their path. Finding you 3 changed me, changed what I care about most." "What happens if you lose?" Zoe asked directly. Carlos smiled at her practical mind. "I'd still have enough money to live comfortably. Your college funds are already established and completely separate from company assets. Nothing would change for you." "But you'd lose everything you built," Noe said quietly. Carlos nodded. "Yes, but I'd still have what matters most, my daughters." Zoe, always the analytical one, had been researching corporate governance. "I've been reading about board votes," she said. "You need to show the board this is personal, not business-related. The company's performance under your leadership should be the focus." Carlos looked at his daughter with surprise and pride. "That's exactly right. You have a strategic mind, Zoe." "She gets it from you," Maria said from the doorway where she had been listening. The next day, the Wall Street Journal ran a feature story. "Family Drama or Corporate Coup? Inside the American Eagle Airlines Power Struggle." The article included quotes from industry analysts discussing the company's strong financial performance under Carlos Rodriguez. When Chloe saw the article, she approached her mother with a suggestion. "What if we tried to meet with Carlos's parents? To explain that we're not trying to cause problems?" "Honey, they made their feelings clear at the picnic," Maria replied gently. "People can change," Chloe insisted. Maybe if they got to know us better. Noe, meanwhile, processed her feelings through art. She created a series of paintings showing a man torn between two worlds. A corporate tower on one side, a family home on the other. The final painting showed the man walking away from the tower toward the home. When Carlos saw the paintings during his next visit, he stared at them for a long time. "You understand exactly what's happening," he said to Noe. "May I keep these? I'd like to show them to someone." At American Eagle headquarters, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense as the board meeting approached. Carlos worked late every night, sometimes sleeping in his office. He restructured his executive team, placing loyal people in key positions. Sofia Diaz stepped smoothly into her new role as COO, taking over daily operations so Carlos could focus on the board challenge. One afternoon, CFO Richard Bennett cornered Carlos in the hallway. "This doesn't have to be so difficult," Bennett said smoothly. "Your parents would accept a compromise. You step down as CEO but remain as chairman. I would take over daily operations." "I'm sure that arrangement would work well for you, Richard," Carlos replied coolly. "But I'm not stepping down." At home, Maria noticed her daughters becoming increasingly involved in Carlos's struggle. Zoe spent hours researching corporate law and shareholder rights. Chloe worried constantly about the family conflict. Noe's artwork grew darker and more intense. "I'm concerned about how invested you're becoming in this situation," Maria told them during dinner. "Carlos's corporate problems shouldn't be your burden." "But we are part of this," Zoe argued. "His parents are doing this because of us." "No," Maria said firmly. "They're doing this because they can't control their son anymore. That's not your responsibility." As the week progressed, media interest in the story intensified. Reporters began appearing outside the Johnsons' apartment building. "How does it feel to be at the center of a corporate war?" one called out as Maria and the girls left for school. "Please leave us alone," Maria said, hurrying her daughters into a taxi. That evening, Carlos arrived looking worried. "I'm sorry about the reporters. I have an idea to solve that problem, but we need to talk about it as a family." He explained that he owned a secure building in Queens, modern and safe but not ostentatiously wealthy. "There's a 4-bedroom apartment available. No reporters could get past security, and it's closer to my Bronx place." "You want us to move?" Maria asked, surprised. "Just for safety and privacy," Carlos assured her. "The media attention will only increase before the board vote." "I don't want to leave our home," Maria said. "But Mom, we can barely get in and out without being bothered now," Chloe pointed out. After much discussion, Maria reluctantly agreed to visit the Queen's apartment. It was spacious and bright, with a modern kitchen and enough room for each girl to have her own bedroom. "It's really nice," Noe admitted, looking out the large windows. "You wouldn't be running away," Carlos told Maria privately. "You'd be protecting the girls from unwanted attention." 2 days later, they began packing their Bronx apartment. The process became an unexpected bonding experience as Carlos helped the girls sort through 16 years of memories. "What's this?" he asked, holding up a small trophy. "Zoe's middle school debate championship," Maria explained. "She argued both sides of the case by herself when her partner got sick." Carlos looked at Zoe with admiration. "You'll make an incredible lawyer someday if medicine doesn't work out." As they packed Noe's art supplies, Carlos received an urgent call. The color drained from his face as he listened. "What is it?" Maria asked when he hung up. "My father had a heart attack," Carlos said quietly. "Minor, but he's in the hospital." "Oh no," Chloe said. "Is he going to be okay?" "They think so," Carlos replied. "I need to go see him." "Of course," Maria said. At the hospital, Elena was waiting outside Richard's room. When she saw Carlos, her expression hardened. "This is your fault," she said quietly. "The stress you've caused with this situation." "I need to see him, Mother," Carlos replied firmly. "He doesn't want to see you." 5 minutes, Carlos insisted. Elena finally stepped aside. Inside the room, Richard looked smaller against the white hospital sheets. "Come to check if I'm dead yet?" Richard asked bitterly. "I came because you're my father," Carlos replied. Their conversation was brief and tense, but it opened a small possibility of eventual understanding. As Carlos prepared to leave, Richard asked, "These girls, are they really worth losing everything we built?" "They're not what I'm losing, Father," Carlos replied. "They're what I've found. They're what—" That evening, Carlos told the Johnson family about his hospital visit. The girls were surprisingly concerned about the grandfather they barely knew. "Should we send something?" Chloe asked. "A card, maybe?" "He tried to take your company," Zoe reminded her. "But he's still family," Chloe argued. After some discussion, they decided Noe would design a card from all three sisters. The next day, she created a beautiful watercolor design with a simple message: "Wishing you a quick recovery. From your granddaughters, Zoe, Chloe, and Noe Johnson." When the card arrived at the hospital, Elena called Carlos. "Why did they do this?" she asked, confused. "Because they're good people," Carlos replied. "Maria raised them to be kind, even to those who haven't been kind to them." As the board meeting approached, Carlos spent one evening sitting with Maria on the balcony of their new Queen's apartment while the girls unpacked inside. "I might lose everything I've built," he admitted. Maria looked at him steadily. "When I found out I was pregnant with triplets at 25, with no partner and no money, I thought my life was over. But I finished nursing school while working nights and raising 3 babies. If I could rebuild my life then, you can rebuild yours now." Carlos took her hand gently. "When did you get so wise?" "When I had no choice," Maria replied with a small smile. The morning of the board meeting arrived with gray skies and light rain. Carlos had barely slept, going over his presentation repeatedly through the night. He was dressed in his best suit by 6 in the morning. "Are you sure you want us there?" Maria asked when he called. "This is a business meeting." "This isn't just business anymore," Carlos replied. "This is about our family. I want the board to see who they're really voting on." At 9:30, a private car picked up Maria and the triplets from their new Queen's apartment. The girls were dressed in their school uniforms, simple navy skirts and white blouses that made them look both professional and young. "I'm nervous," Chloe admitted as they approached the gleaming American Eagle headquarters. "Me too," Noe said quietly. "We just need to sit there," Zoe reminded them. "Carlos is the one who has to convince the board." Instead of entering through the main lobby, their driver took them to an underground parking area. Amanda, Carlos's assistant, was waiting by a private elevator. "Mr. Rodriguez is already upstairs," she explained. "We're avoiding the main entrance because reporters are gathered there." On the top floor, Carlos waited outside the boardroom. When he saw his family, relief washed over his face. "Thank you for coming," he said, hugging each of his daughters. He led them to a quiet corner away from the arriving board members. "I just want to prepare you. My parents will be there along with Richard Bennett and other executives who support them. It might get uncomfortable." "We can handle it," Zoe said confidently. "What exactly will happen?" Maria asked. "First, my father will present his case against me. Then I'll give my response, the board will ask questions, and then they'll vote." Carlos paused. "Whatever happens today, please know that my commitment to you all doesn't change." At 10 o'clock sharp, the boardroom doors opened. Inside, a long polished table was surrounded by 14 chairs. Richard and Elena Rodriguez were already seated near the head of the table, with CFO Bennett and several other executives nearby. The remaining board members, mostly older men and 2 women, looked up with surprise as Carlos entered with Maria and the triplets. "What is this?" Richard asked sharply. "This is a private board meeting, not a family gathering." "These are stakeholders in the future of American Eagle Airlines," Carlos replied calmly. "They deserve to hear what's being said." He directed Maria and the girls to chairs against the wall behind his seat at the table. The triplets sat with straight backs, their identical faces composed but nervous. Victoria Winters, one of the few female board members, studied them with open curiosity. Henry Jackson, the oldest board member, frowned but said nothing. "Let's begin," said William Peterson, the board chairman. "This emergency meeting has been called to address concerns about leadership. Mr. Richard Rodriguez, you requested this vote of no confidence. Please present your case." Richard stood, leaning slightly on the table for support. His recent heart attack had weakened him, but his voice remained strong. "Board members, I helped build this company from nothing. My son has been CEO for 11 years, and until recently, he led with clear judgment. However, in the past 2 months, his priorities have shifted dramatically." Richard gestured toward Maria and the triplets. "These personal developments have consumed his attention. Important decisions have been delayed. Carlos has been absent from the office for days at a time, dealing with family matters when he should have been focused on business." He continued, describing how Carlos had publicly defied his parents at the company picnic and restructured his executive team without proper consultation. "The CEO position requires total commitment," Richard concluded. "Carlos has demonstrated that his commitment now lies elsewhere." "Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez," Chairman Peterson said. "Carlos, your response?" Carlos stood, buttoning his suit jacket. He placed a folder on the table but didn't open it. "First, I want to address the company's performance during this supposedly distracted period." He presented key financial indicators showing American Eagle Airlines had maintained or improved its position in every important metric. On-time flights were up 3%. Customer satisfaction had increased. Stock value remained stable despite the public leadership controversy. "Now, I want to address the personal matter at hand," Carlos continued. 2 months ago, I discovered I have 3 daughters. Through no fault of their own, they grew up without my support or knowledge. When I found them, I had a choice: ignore them to focus solely on business or embrace my responsibility as their father. He turned to face the full board. "I chose to be a father as well as a CEO. I don't believe these roles conflict. In fact, I believe becoming a father has made me a better leader." Then Carlos did something unexpected. He invited each daughter to stand as he introduced them. "Zoe Johnson, my oldest daughter by 7 minutes, recently identified an inconsistency in our customer service protocol that was causing repeat complaints. Her suggestion to change the response procedure has reduced customer service escalations by 12%. Zoe blushed, but stood tall as Carlos continued. "Chloe Johnson noticed during her visit to our operations center that staff from different departments weren't communicating effectively during weather delays. Her natural diplomatic skills helped us create a new communications process that has improved emergency response times." Chloe smiled shyly at the board members, some of whom were now watching with interest rather than disapproval. "And Noe Johnson, whose artistic eye identified issues with our recent rebranding materials before they went to print, saving the company thousands of dollars in reprinting costs." Noe ducked her head, uncomfortable with the attention, but stood beside her sisters. "These young women haven't distracted me from business. They've brought fresh perspectives and valuable insights. Diverse viewpoints make organizations stronger, not weaker." As Carlos finished his presentation, Victoria Winters leaned forward. "I have a question," she said, looking directly at Carlos. "Why should we believe you won't abandon this company when it's convenient, just as you abandoned your family years ago?" A painful silence filled the room. The triplets exchanged worried glances. Before Carlos could answer, Maria stood up. "May I address that question?" she asked. Chairman Peterson looked surprised but nodded. Briefly, "Carlos didn't know about his daughters," Maria said clearly. "I tried to tell him, but his parents prevented my messages from reaching him. When we reconnected 2 months ago, he immediately acknowledged his responsibility. Since then, he has been consistent, dependable, and fully committed to being present in our daughters' lives." She looked at Elena and Richard. "The same qualities that make him a good father make him a good leader: the ability to acknowledge mistakes, adapt to change, and remain focused on what matters most, "Thank you, Ms. Johnson," Chairman Peterson said. "The board will now vote in private. Everyone else, please wait outside." In the hallway, Carlos hugged Maria. "Thank you for that." "I just told the truth," she replied. While they waited, Richard Rodriguez approached the triplets who were sitting on a bench away from the adults. "Girls," he said quietly, "I know we haven't had much chance to know each other. That's unfortunate." "Yes, it is," Chloe agreed politely. "I want you to know that whatever happens today, your future is secure," Richard continued. "If you could encourage your father to step down voluntarily, I would personally ensure you have everything you need, the best schools, opportunities, anything." Zoe stood up, her eyes flashing with anger. "Are you trying to bribe us?" "Not at all," Richard said smoothly. "I'm offering family support." "We already have family support," Zoe replied. "Our father is fighting for his company and for us. We don't need your conditional offers." Richard's face hardened. "You sound just like him." "Good," Zoe said firmly. After 45 minutes of deliberation, they were called back into the boardroom. Carlos squeezed each daughter's hand before they entered. Chairman Peterson stood at the head of the table. "After careful consideration, the board has decided against removing Carlos Rodriguez as CEO of American Eagle Airlines." Carlos closed his eyes briefly in relief. "However," Peterson continued, "we are implementing several governance changes. Sofia Diaz will continue as COO with expanded authority. Major decisions will require executive committee approval, and Carlos will report monthly to the board on company performance." "We accept these conditions," Carlos said immediately. As the meeting ended, Elena approached Carlos while the others filed out. "You're choosing them over your own parents," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "After everything we sacrificed for you." "I'm not choosing anyone over you," Carlos replied gently. "I'm just refusing to choose against them. There's room for all of you in my life, if you want to be there." Elena looked at the triplets, who were watching cautiously from across the room. "I don't know if I can accept this." "That's your choice, Mother," Carlos said. "But they are your granddaughters. And they sent you both a get-well card even after how you treated them. They're remarkable young women." Outside the building, reporters shouted questions as the family exited through a side door to their waiting car. "Mr. Rodriguez, did you keep your position? Are these your daughters? Miss Johnson, how does it feel to reconnect with Carlos Rodriguez?" Once safely in the car, the tension finally broke. Chloe hugged Carlos tightly. "You did it!" she exclaimed. "We did it!" Carlos corrected, looking at Maria. "Together." "What happens now?" Noe asked quietly. Carlos looked out at the rainy New York streets. "Now we build something new. Something better than before." Zoe smiled slightly. "A company?" "No," Carlos replied, taking Maria's hand. "A family." In the weeks following the board showdown, Carlos divided his time between rebuilding trust at American Eagle Airlines and strengthening his bonds with his newly discovered family. The governance changes required him to work closely with Sofia Diaz, who had officially taken over as Chief Operating Officer. "The transition is going smoothly," Carlos told Maria over coffee in her new Queen's kitchen. "Sofia is brilliant. The board actually likes her leadership style, direct but diplomatic." "I liked her from the beginning," Maria said. "She was the only one at that picnic who treated the girls like people instead of problems." Outside their building, a small group of reporters still gathered occasionally, hoping for photos or comments. The board meeting drama had made the Johnson family unwilling local celebrities. "Miss Johnson, can we get a statement about your relationship with Carlos Rodriguez?" a reporter called out as Maria left for work one morning. "I'm late for my shift at the hospital," Maria replied, hurrying to her car. The girls faced similar attention at school. Students who had never spoken to them suddenly wanted to be friends. Teachers treated them differently, some with more respect, others with suspicion about whether their grades were truly earned. Casey Miller asked if I could get her father a job at the airline, Chloe told her sisters over lunch. We've been in the same class for 3 years and she's never even said hello before. Mr. Patterson suggested I might not need a scholarship for college anymore, Zoe added with annoyance, as if I wouldn't still earn one on my own merit. Noe, as always, expressed her feelings through her art. Her latest series showed 3 identical girls surrounded by faceless figures reaching toward them with grasping hands. "This is really good, but also kind of disturbing," Carlos said when he saw the paintings during his regular evening visit. "That's how it feels sometimes," Noe explained quietly. "Like people only see us now because of you." Carlos nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. When my parents became wealthy, suddenly everyone wanted to be their friend." He looked at Maria. "How are you handling all this attention?" "It's not easy," she admitted. "But the security in this building helps. At least we don't have people knocking on our door anymore." The new apartment in Queens had gradually become home over the past 3 weeks. It was spacious and modern, with enough room for each girl to have her own bedroom for the first time in their lives. Carlos had helped them move, working alongside Maria to arrange furniture and hang pictures. "I want to paint my walls dark blue," Noe had requested, looking at the plain white walls of her new room. "Of course," Carlos had replied. The next day he arrived with paint supplies and spent the afternoon helping Noe transform her space, getting more paint on himself than on the walls. These small moments of normal family life meant everything to Carlos. He had missed 16 years of birthdays, school events, and everyday moments. Now he treasured even simple things like helping with homework or driving the girls to weekend activities. "Dad's taking us to the museum today," Chloe told Maria one Saturday morning. Maria raised her eyebrows at the word "dad." It was the first time any of the girls had used it. "Have fun," she said, trying to hide her complicated feelings. As the weeks passed, Carlos continued working to stabilize the company while deepening his relationship with his daughters. The triplets' high school graduation was approaching in 2 months, and college decisions would need to be made soon. "I got accepted to pre-med programs at 5 schools," Zoe announced at dinner one evening, "including Harvard." "That's amazing!" Carlos exclaimed. "Harvard was my alma mater." "I know," Zoe replied with a small smile. "That might have influenced my application a little." "Columbia accepted me for international relations," Chloe added. "And Cornell has that special program that combines languages and business." "Both excellent schools," Carlos nodded. "What about you, Noe?" Noe looked down at her plate. "Rhode Island School of Design said yes, and Pratt Institute. But they're both really expensive, even with scholarships." "That's not something you need to worry about," Carlos assured her. "The trust funds I established will cover any school you choose." Later, after the girls had gone to their rooms, Maria and Carlos sat in the living room talking quietly. "They're all considering schools far from home," Maria observed. "I always knew this time would come, but it's hard to let them go," Carlos finished. "I just found them, and soon they'll be leaving." "That's parenthood," Maria said. "We raise them to be independent, then miss them when they are." Carlos looked at her thoughtfully. "You've done an incredible job with them, Maria. I wish I had been there to help." "So do I," Maria admitted, "especially during those early years with 3 babies and night shifts at the hospital." She sighed. "But that's in the past now." "Speaking of the past," Carlos said carefully, "my father called today." Maria tensed slightly. "What did he want?" "He asked if the girls might visit him and my mother. He's still recovering at home, and I think the heart attack scared him, made him realize he might never know his granddaughters. After how they treated the girls at the picnic, after they tried to take your company?" Maria shook her head. "I don't think that's a good idea." "I understand your concern," Carlos said, "but people can change when faced with their own mortality. The get-well card the girls sent really affected my father." "That was Chloe's idea," Maria said. "She always sees the best in people." "What if we start small?" Carlos suggested. "A short visit, all of us together?" Maria considered this. I'll talk to the girls. It should be their decision. The next evening, the family discussed the potential visit over dinner. I'd like to meet them properly, Chloe said immediately. Everyone deserves a second chance. They had their chance at the picnic, Zoe countered. They were terrible to Mom and to us. What do you think, Noe? Maria asked her quietest daughter. Noe considered before speaking. I'd go if everyone else does. I'm curious about them. We should go, Chloe insisted. They're our only grandparents besides Grandma Gloria. Fine, Zoe finally agreed. One visit, but I'm not calling them Grandma and Grandpa. 2 days later, Carlos drove the family to his parents' home in Westchester County. The large house sat behind iron gates on manicured grounds. You grew up here? Chloe asked, eyes wide. From age 12, Carlos replied, after my father's business became successful. Elena opened the door before they could ring the bell. She wore a simple but elegant outfit and looked nervous, an expression Maria had never seen on her face before. Thank you for coming, Elena said stiffly. Richard is in the sunroom. The meeting was awkward at first. Richard sat in an armchair, looking paler and thinner than at the board meeting. Elena hovered nearby, unsure of her role. Thank you for the card, Richard said to the triplets. It was thoughtful. I designed it, Noe offered quietly. You're very talented, Richard replied. Carlos said you've been accepted to art school. Gradually, the conversation became less forced. Elena brought out photo albums showing Carlos as a child. The girls were fascinated to see their father's younger self. You had braces too, Chloe exclaimed, pointing to a teenage Carlos with metal-covered teeth. For 3 years, Carlos groaned. Most awkward phase of my life. As the visit ended, Richard called Carlos aside while Maria and the girls said goodbye to Elena. I was wrong, Richard said quietly. Not about everything, but about them. They're remarkable young women. Yes, they are, Carlos agreed. Your mother and we'd like to be part of their lives, if you'll allow it. Carlos nodded. That's not just my decision. Maria and the girls have a say too. Of course, Richard acknowledged. We understand we need to earn their trust. On the drive home, Chloe chatted excitedly about the visit. Elena said she'd teach me to make traditional Cuban desserts. And did you see all those photos of Dad as a teenager? So funny. Even Zoe admitted they were not as bad as at the picnic. As graduation approached, Carlos had another suggestion for the family. I have a vacation home in the Hamptons, he told them. I thought we might have a graduation celebration there, just us. Maria hesitated. I'm not sure, Carlos. That feels like a lot. It's just a house by the beach, Carlos said. Nothing fancy. Maria gave him a skeptical look, knowing his definition of nothing fancy was very different from hers. The girls would love it, Carlos added, and it would give us time to talk about how we handle things moving forward, holidays, family traditions, visits during college. Are you proposing a formal co-parenting arrangement? Maria asked. In a way, yes, Carlos admitted. The girls will be starting college soon. I'd like us to have clear plans for family time, traditions we can build together. Maria looked out the window at the Queen's Street below. For 16 years, she had made every decision about her daughters' lives. Sharing that responsibility, even with their father, still felt strange. I'll think about it, she said finally. That night, Maria called her mother in Chicago. He wants to take us to his beach house for graduation, she explained, to talk about family traditions and holidays. And you're worried about what? Gloria asked. About boundaries getting blurred. About the girls getting used to a lifestyle I can't provide. About letting someone else into the family you built, Gloria finished. Maria, you've been in control of everything for so long. Maybe it's time to share the load a little. Is that your way of saying I should say yes? That's my way of saying the girls are almost adults. They deserve to know both sides of their family, even if it's complicated. and you deserve some help after all these years of doing everything alone." After they hung up, Maria looked at a recent photo of her daughters with Carlos. They were smiling in a way she hadn't seen before, a sense of completeness in their expressions. Making room for Carlos in their lives hadn't diminished her role as their mother. It had simply given the girls something they had always missed. The next morning she texted Carlos, "Beach house sounds good. Let's plan for graduation weekend." 1 year had passed since the fateful day at JFK International Airport when the Johnson and Rodriguez worlds had collided. Today was graduation day at Bronx Science High School. The auditorium buzzed with excitement as families filed in, looking for seats. Carlos arrived early, saving places in the third row. He wore a simple but expensive suit and carried 3 bouquets of flowers. When Maria arrived, she looked beautiful in a new blue dress she had bought specially for the occasion. "Nervous?" Carlos asked as she sat beside him. "A little," Maria admitted. "It feels like just yesterday they were starting kindergarten. Now they're graduating and heading to college." "They're ready," Carlos said, "because of you." The ceremony began with a speech from the principal, followed by awards presentations. The Johnson triplets received special recognition: Zoe as valedictorian, Chloe for community service, and Noe for artistic achievement. When Zoe took the stage for her valedictorian speech, Maria reached for Carlos's hand without thinking. "Fellow graduates," Zoe began, "our lives are shaped not only by our choices but by unexpected moments that change everything. A year ago, my sisters and I met our father for the first time in an airport lounge." She paused, looking at Carlos. That moment could have remained awkward and painful. Instead, it became the beginning of something new. After the ceremony, families gathered in the courtyard for photos. The triplets stood together in their graduation gowns, holding their diplomas while Maria and Carlos beamed proudly beside them. "One more with Grandma Gloria," Carlos suggested, waving Maria's mother over to join them. Gloria Johnson had flown in from Chicago for the graduation. She used a cane now after her knee surgery, but moved with determination to stand beside her granddaughters. "I never thought I'd see this day," she whispered to Maria. The graduation party was held at a community center near their old Bronx neighborhood. Carlos had wanted to host it at an expensive restaurant, but Maria insisted on keeping it simple and accessible for all their friends. The large room was decorated with blue and silver balloons and streamers. A banner reading, "Congratulations, graduates," hung across the back wall. Tables of food lined one side, and a DJ played music in the corner. What made the celebration unique was the mix of guests. Hospital nurses chatted with airline executives. The triplets' school friends mingled with Carlos's business associates. Sofia Diaz, now firmly established as COO of American Eagle Airlines, had brought her family. "This is quite a gathering," Sofia said to Maria, "2 worlds coming together." "It's still strange sometimes," Maria admitted, "but it works, somehow." "How's the nursing education center coming along?" Sofia asked. Maria smiled. "We're opening next month in the Bronx. Carlos helped with the business plan, but I'm running it my way." "I'd love to volunteer sometimes," Sofia offered. "Before business school, I was pre-med." "We could definitely use your help," Maria replied warmly. A slight stir near the entrance caught their attention. Richard and Elena Rodriguez had arrived. They looked uncomfortable but determined as they made their way through the crowd. "Congratulations," Richard said formally, handing each triplet a small gift box. "Thank you for coming, Grandpa," Chloe said, giving him a quick hug that clearly surprised and touched him. Elena had made an effort with her appearance, wearing a simple but elegant outfit that wouldn't stand out too much in this setting. "Your speech was excellent, Zoe," she said. "You have your father's gift for public speaking." "Thank you," Zoe replied politely. Their relationship was still tentative, but the open hostility was gone. The Rodriguez grandparents didn't stay long, but their appearance marked important progress. As they were leaving, another unexpected guest arrived. Jennifer, Carlos's ex-girlfriend. "Jennifer," Carlos said, surprised. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I wanted to congratulate the girls," Jennifer replied. She looked different, more relaxed, with simpler clothes and less makeup, and to apologize for how I behaved when we first met. She turned to the triplets. "Your father talks about you constantly at the office. You've made him very happy." "You still work at American Eagle?" Maria asked. "Yes," Jennifer nodded, "just not as Carlos's girlfriend. I'm head of customer experience now. Sophia's been a wonderful mentor." As the party continued, guests gathered to hear about the triplets' future plans. "I'll be attending Harvard in the fall," Zoe announced. "Pre-med with a scholarship." She glanced at her father, though Dad tried to convince me to use the trust fund instead. "I wanted her to have more free time to enjoy college," Carlos explained, "but she insisted on keeping the scholarship she earned." "I'm going to Cornell," Chloe shared next, "for international relations and business, and I'll be interning at American Eagle's International Division during breaks. And I'm attending Rhode Island School of Design," Noe said quietly. "Dad connected me with a gallery owner who's already interested in my work." Carlos stood and raised his glass. "I want to thank everyone for celebrating with us today. But most of all, I want to thank Maria." He turned to face her. "When I met these amazing young women a year ago, I instantly knew they were mine. But the people they've become, their character, their values, their strength, that's because of you, Maria. You raised 3 remarkable daughters on your own, and I will be forever grateful." As the party reached its peak, the Johnson-Rodriguez family stepped outside for a moment of quiet together. "I have something for you," Carlos said to Maria, handing her a folder. Inside were legal documents establishing the Maria Johnson Nursing Scholarship Foundation, with substantial funding to support nursing students from underprivileged backgrounds. "Carlos," Maria whispered, "this is too much." "It's exactly right," he replied. "You always wanted to help other students like you were, smart, dedicated, needing financial support." Maria reached into her bag and pulled out a package wrapped in simple blue paper. "This is for you," she said. Carlos opened it to find a leather-bound book containing Noe's artwork from the past year, sketches and paintings documenting their journey from strangers to family. "This is—" Carlos couldn't finish, too moved by the gift. "A record of how we became a family," Maria said. "Noe has been documenting everything since that day at the airport." As they prepared to go back inside, a woman approached them hesitantly from the parking lot. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm not sure if you remember me." Maria tensed. "Heather Williams, from the airport lounge." It was indeed Heather, though she looked different. Her designer clothes replaced with a simple dress, her expression humble rather than entitled. "I've been wanting to contact you for months," Heather said, "to apologize for my behavior that day." "How did you find us?" Carlos asked. "The graduation announcement was in the Bronx community paper. I recognized your names." Heather took a deep breath. "After what happened at the airport, my company fired me when the story went viral. I deserved it. I had to do community service as part of my settlement with American Eagle Airlines." "What kind of community service?" Chloe asked curiously. "Working at a family shelter in Brooklyn," Heather replied. "At first I hated it. Then I started actually listening to the families there, hearing their stories." She looked directly at Maria. "I was wrong about so many things. The way I treated you and your daughters was inexcusable." The family exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. "Thank you for the apology," Maria finally said. Heather nodded. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that day changed my life. I still volunteer at the shelter even though my required hours ended months ago." Chloe, always the peacemaker, stepped forward. "Would you like to come inside? There's plenty of food." Heather looked surprised. "I couldn't impose—" "It's okay," Zoe said with unexpected warmth. Our family knows something about second chances." Back inside, a photographer was setting up for a formal family portrait. Carlos, Maria, the triplets, and Gloria gathered together, arranging themselves naturally as if they had always been a family. "Everyone say together," the photographer called. "Together," they replied in unison. As the camera flashed, capturing the moment, Carlos realized how much had changed in 1 year. The airport confrontation that had begun with prejudice and judgment had somehow led to this moment of completion. "I've been thinking," he said quietly to Maria as they walked back to join the party. "The girls will be away at college soon. Maybe we could have dinner sometimes? Just the two of us?" Maria looked at him thoughtfully. "I'd like that," she said with a small smile. "We have 16 years to catch up on." Around them, their guests from 2 different worlds laughed and talked together, no longer separated by wealth or background. The triplets moved confidently through the crowd, at home in both worlds now. The journey hadn't been easy, and there would be more challenges ahead. But watching Noe sketch the scene, Chloe charm a group of executives, and Zoe deepen conversation with a Harvard medical professor, Carlos knew with certainty that his impulsive decision to stand up and acknowledge his daughters 1 year ago had been the best choice he had ever made. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.